So we did head coaching rankings a while back, and we said that you could justify drafting Kyle Shanahan number 1, even if you can't like stack his resume up right now to put him ahead of Belichick or Andy or even like Mike Tomlin, right? Just the resume doesn't stack. That doesn't mean you couldn't justify taking him number 1 or number 2 in an NFL coach draft. Well, Cowherd put together a list of his top 10 coaches, and here were his criteria. Age does matter, because we always have this argument like, well, if age doesn't matter, if I just do it for 1 year, I'm taking Brady. Easy to work with, the less controversy, the better. Innovative thinker, and relates to players. Okay, so here's his list. Kyle Shanahan, number 1. Sean McDermott, Doug Pederson, McVay, John Harbaugh, Matt Nagy, Brian Flores, Lincoln Riley, Urban Meyer, Mike Tomlin. So 2 college coaches, 1 college coach, 1 analyst on the list. 1 Harbaugh. It's funny, if you'd done this list 5 years ago, which Harbaugh would have been number 5? But
Jimmy.
Yeah, so there you go. Shanahan number 1. Not. By the way, can I just say this before we start like breaking it down piece by piece? Not controversial. Kyle Shanahan number 1. Not inspired take. You and I have talked about this for a while now, but not controversial.
Sean McDermott, pretty bold. I like him. He's impressive. He's an impressive guy.
Bold, maybe wrong, but bold.
I think if I was an Eagles fan, I'd go, well, Doug not only won a playoff game 2 years ago with Nick Foles on the road when the guy missed the fucking field goal, but he also won the Super Bowl the previous year.
And you could couldn't you also argue like, go ahead, finish that thought, because
if Doug Pederson was Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, how would he be talked about?
Like, just what do you mean if he was
coach in the league?
How would he have to be?
I'm just saying if Sean McVay had done what Doug Pederson did, or Kyle Shanahan had done what Doug Pederson did.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, won a Super Bowl and then had success and made the playoffs.
Would be ahead of Kyle.
Yeah, you couldn't even say it with a straight face, right? If Sean McVay 3 straight years, 3 straight playoffs, won a playoff game in one, lost a tight one in another, and won a Super Bowl.
And by the way, did it in Philly, delivered a championship to Philadelphia, and handled the media the way Doug did. Because I watched Doug's press conferences.
Pretty disrespected.
Yeah, I think you could argue that, because he does a hell of a job with all of that shit, right? And he's a former quarterback. He's like, what? Well, I don't know why. Well, Guy, why is this?
I was watching. I think he's kind of self-deprecating. I talked to him the other day. Or not the other day, but at the combine. I was asking about his kids. I think one of his kids in an Ivy League school. I'm like, God, you got some smart kids. He's like, yeah, I'm the dumbest guy in the family. I just think he's kind of a humble from the South. He's not like showy.
But Shanahan,
I don't know.
McDermott isn't.
No, I don't.
Now he's got
know.
Doug third on this list, so this list is giving Doug Pederson good respect.
Yeah,
But I agree with you. In general, I agree. He does not get enough. No.
He wins.
He deals
with a quarterback.
The backup quarterback. Now Nick's pretty solid, obviously, but
we were talking about this before we jumped on. I do think it's a little unfair. Like, the college game and the pro game to me has never been more different, right? In the sense of recruiting has never been crazier than it is now. Like, it truly is. You talk to these college coaches, 365, and I think at the big schools like Lincoln Riley, he's spending more time on sophomores than he is the seniors, right? Because the seniors are committed. So you're spending more time than they ever have. In basketball, they always did this, but football was not like this, I'd say, 10 years ago. You're constantly spending all your time on, like, the sophomore class once your class is committed.
Right.
And I don't think they parallel each other. Being able to deal with NFL players and being able to the personality to deal with college players is a lot different. And I just think, like, a lot of these guys, like, there's a chance Lincoln Riley never coaches in the pros. Urban never did, and he probably won't ever. Like, I don't know, like, how to even compare, like, Urban Meyer and Doug Pederson, right? Here's what I know. Urban is a great coach. I think he's a little bit of a hypocrite and a little fraudulent with some of the stuff, but because he's wired more like an NFL guy, but he speaks like a college guy, like changing lives, influencing people, all that stuff. But he wins, and he wins big time. But would he work in the NFL? I don't know.
I don't know.
Would Lincoln work? I don't know. Would Kyle work in college, right? Could you put Kyle at USC and just think they'd be a power? Like, football, they'd be good.
Part of what we're saying is, does Kyle want to do that stuff, right?
But I think most college coaches don't, quote unquote, necessarily want to do that, right? they don't love doing. It's just part of the gig.
Yeah, but I guess for college there is this wider array almost of skill sets that can make you one of the best college coaches that don't involve
like
being an offensive coach.
James Franklin's viewed as like the number one recruiter / personality in college football, right? And I don't think he's viewed as like some dynamic scheme guy, but he can land players,
right?
And it works. Like his,
but that's where
State's
Lincoln's
top 10
unique, right?
program.
Lincoln's had three quarterbacks in 3 years. Be great. Now he's got. I was listening to him. Cowherd had him on the show during the week, and they talked for a while about now he's got this guy Spencer Rattler, right, who is like
Arizona kid
who is like a recruited guy who now, right, what happens? But I wonder, like, do you win? Lincoln's what, 36? Do you win a championship and then give it a shot? Like, he's still pretty young.
You would say I would pick him,
but he also was at
Urban.
A destination job.
Wouldn't you pick the scheme guy more than the CEO type? Like, to me, Matt Rule is going to be very, very dependent on his coordinators. Lincoln Riley is only going to be dependent on his defensive coordinator because he's going to control the offense. Urban Meyer, he's quote unquote an offensive guy. Well, Dan Mullen was a fucking offensive coordinator. Well, who was his offensive coordinator at Ohio State? Tom Herman. Like, he's had great offensive coordinators when he's coached at these programs. Luke Fickell. Well, it turns out Luke Fickell's pretty good, right? He's had really good coaching staffs. Lincoln Riley, you just think like the guy's just a dynamic schemer.
Well,
like at the end of the day, what they say about Saban can just be your defensive coordinator.
I
right?
think Lincoln, right?
I don't know if he does it as much anymore.
I mean, Lincoln.
I think Lincoln.
Cliff Kingsbury was. I mean, what, an average college football coach by the numbers? And
you might be able to argue below.
Was he under 500? He won 5 games last year with Lincoln Riley's quarterback. So I would bet on Lincoln Riley.
Because you would take Lincoln Riley over Cliff Kingsbury to run your NFL team, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury guy,
was
career record in college, 35-40.
Okay. So, I think on this list, how about Nagy at 6? How many ball? By the way, is Lincoln Bald Brotherhood? Has he buzzed it, or is it just?
Well, he's hanging on.
He's hanging on. So he's not. We got Flores. We got Nagy. We got McDermott.
Now, no one would argue that Oklahoma is not a vastly superior job than Texas Tech.
Of course.
But like Lincoln is 36-6.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, other coaches, plenty of coaches have had blue chip jobs and not won just because they're at that place. So you get
0-3 in the bowls. Lincoln.
Well, what bowls is he in? Like CFP
he's lost
playoff games.
He's lost to Bama and Georgia.
I mean, he's not in the toilet bowl against it's Oklahoma against the second place team from the Mountain West. Like, no, he's playing in the college football playoff. He's got to get over the hump. But whatever.
Let me rephrase that. Georgia and LSU this year. That's who he played. Because remember, Burrow had like 7 touchdowns in the first half.
I was talking to somebody the other day. They're like, one thing with LSU is like they proved last year you don't have to have a great defense. I'm like, yeah, you just need not a great defense and the greatest offense in the history of college football, and you're golden.
Well, that's the other thing, guy. I'm trying to think. They had 2 first-rounders on defense. 2 first-rounders. Might have been 3. But they had the pass rusher and a linebacker. First-rounders. So it's like, yeah, they didn't have a great defense. Well, they had multiple first-rounders and probably a couple more guys drafted out the defense. So let's not act like they just rolled out Washington State's defense or something, right?
Now you
I think that some of this stuff gets thrown around a little bit. Like,
no,
even
it's a soft
Oklahoma's
Big 12 defense.
It was dramatically better than it's been.
I'm just trying to picture now Kyle Shanahan as a college coach. Like, if we said number 1 on this list has to be somebody that you thought would be great, could do either one.
I think Lincoln, knowing people that are around him, I talked to him one time, 2 years ago, but you can just sense in his voice, he's really serious. And I think sometimes with young people under 40, you just think, they're just kind of got the best of both worlds, like loosey-goosey with the guys.
You're talking about Kyle or you're saying Lincoln? Is that right?
I'm just talking about just coaches when they're younger. They're like just cool, like Sean McVay. One thing that Sean McVay has when he talks, like he's a pretty serious guy. Now he balances the jokes probably a little better than Kyle, even though I think Kyle's
just dry. I think Kyle's just dry,
Yeah, Kyle.
Like his humor
Sean's
is there. He just doesn't tell you it's coming with a smile ahead of time.
I think Lincoln has a vibe like those two guys.
Yeah. But
He's
I'm
just
saying
very true to himself.
like
I think he'd be fine.
I would not bet against Kyle coaching college football.
But he'd hate it. I think that I just don't think he'd have any desire to do it.
Well, I agree. If given the choice,
I think Sean McVay would be a better college coach than Kyle. Like I think it's made for his personality more.
McVay.
I think he'd do it. I think Gruden would be pretty good too.
Yeah, really good college coach. Yeah.
Like you see with Herm, I think he'd be made for it. I think he'd crush. Like if he was in the SEC, I think he'd be big time. To me, maybe Lincoln, maybe he does like it. Maybe part of his personality is like he likes doing that. Now, back to what you said, like Oklahoma, there's an element of it, I don't know, being Oklahoma. Right? He's not like begging people to come there.
Here's the other thing.
Fucking play?
If I could stand up for like Andy Reid right now, okay, age matters, so this is a younger list. But Mac Brown is 68, 69 years old, and he's 62, right? Like colleges, the schedule is year-round for sure because you got recruiting, got these other things. There's a reason Steve Spurrier liked college, though. It did not require you to sleep on your office couch every night. Like, I know he's 62, but you couldn't convince me Andy Reid couldn't just get a big program, go to USC, basic level of recruiting, offensive guru.
What if he was just a little tired of the NFL, wanted to move back to California? Now, I don't know how he'd get tired as long as, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes is there. And just like 5 years USC, and I'll just pick a coach in waiting or something. Like, do you think he'd struggle? Like,
No.
You think he'd struggle to dial up plays against fucking Arizona? Like, what if he's like, I want to be the next head coach at USC? What would they say? Like, no?
It'd say yes. And all the quarterbacks would line up, John, right?
Well, if you were a coach or you were a player, a skill guy, or you could argue any position in college, you were going to go to college, and they just hired Andy Reid. Wouldn't you want to go there knowing that guy can get you to the next level?
Do you know how many years Steve Spurrier coached?
I think Tomlin would crush too.
Do you know how many years Steve Spurrier? Yeah, good call. How many years Steve Spurrier coached at South Carolina so he goes right. He's at Florida. He's incredible. He goes to Washington. He's 12-20 in 2 years. Like I'd rather golf with my shirt off. He goes to South Carolina, John, for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years. Goes 86-49.
I think he had like 3 of the best years in the history of the program, like 11 or 12
3 straight
wins.
11-win seasons.
Yeah.
And
Now,
they're in the SEC. He had an over 500 record in the SEC at South Carolina.
They had a historic run for the state of prospects coming out of the state of South Carolina. I can just name about 3 of them. Clowney, Stephon Gilmore, All-Pro, Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, guys from the hometown. It was just a unique time, and he landed them all. Like, that's the group of 11 win guys were all those guys. I'm not taking it away from him, but it was – would he have won 11 if there just hadn't been this crop of like 7, 8
guys? You got to get them. Like, a great players come out of the state of California all the time. You got to get them to stay.
I wonder – I'd have to go back and look. That had to be a huge just coup for South Carolina. Just he failed at Washington. Why do they give a shit? We'll take Steve Spurrier. When they landed Steve Spurrier, that'd be the equivalent of Lincoln Riley. Let's say Lincoln Riley's at Oklahoma. Goes to like the Texans in 2 years. Fails, right? Wins like five games. Like, fuck this, I'm out. And then all of a sudden it's like Iowa. And that might not be even a bad example. Like Oregon State or something. Like just landed Lincoln Riley. Like that. If I told you Lincoln Riley in a couple years leaves to some team, does not go well for 2 years. Like, who does not want Lincoln Riley coming back?
But to me, he would get a top 10 job right away, right?
But Steve Spurrier was winning national champions, like change college footballs.
I know, and I'm saying Lincoln would get a better job than that.
Maybe part of it was like Steve, like I live in the South. Yeah. I want to be in the SEC. I want to get back at Florida.
Here's the other thing. Belichick's what, 66, 68?
68, I think.
I mean, if Urban's on this list and he's medically retired twice, basically, well, I guess once in the second one there was just a bunch of controversy, but he's 10 years younger, 11 years, 13 years younger. but he's never coached the NFL. I mean, Bill, you tell me Bill couldn't coach a college program for 5 years?
Again, like, do you see him kissing sophomores' asses?
No, but it's part of this is like if he wanted to do it, you telling me sophomores would maybe if you're Bill Belichick, you don't have to kiss as much ass. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's why people from Alabama always told me, like, yeah, we don't recruit them. We pick them.
Yeah.
You know, Saban is not jerking off as many guys, not literally, but, you know, begging people to come play for him. He tells you you're in, right?
Yeah.
And that is the benefit of being at one of the top 3 or 4 programs. There are, I would say, wouldn't you say on a given year, Ohio State, Bama, Oklahoma, maybe a little more, like max 2 guys they're really kind of fighting for.
Clemson right now.
And Clemson. And really it's like, well, who did Alabama fight for? Well, they were on the final list between Clemson.
And Stanford will be in on a few of those guys, right? Oregon will be in on a few.
Yeah,
of
but
those guys.
they're a little nichier.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But just like there'll be one or two of those guys will end up just at Clemson, but Stanford was on his final. Actually, there was a running back that just committed to Clemson who was down at like Stanford. Was like his last 5. But he's from out there. But McCaffrey was his favorite guy. Anyway.
You got to ride that McCaffrey, Zach.